The story picks up 6 days after the previous events, with Joel still haunted by the smile demon. He finds the hideout of 2 drug dealers and waits for one of them to arrive. When the brother shows up, Joel masks his face and takes him hostage at gunpoint. The man tries to intimidate Joel, but Joel shoves him into a room where the second dealer is sitting. Joel confronts them about their shared crime, but they mock his threats. In response, Joel pulls out a knife and kills one of the dealers, hoping to rid himself of the curse. Immediately, the surviving brother shoots Joel, wounding him, but the brother dies from Joel's bullet. With the death of the witness who was supposed to inherit the curse, Joel starts to panic. He hears a noise from another room and discovers a drug buyer pleading for his life. Apologizing, Joel steps outside, only to be captured by the dealer's accomplices. He escapes through a side exit, but is hit by a car and dragged across the street, leaving behind a trail of blood that resembles a giant smile. Sometime later in New York, pop star Skye Riley arrives for an interview with Drew Barrymore. Despite her successful career, Skye is struggling with substance abuse and alcohol, still reeling from the death of her boyfriend, actor Paul Hudson, in a car accident. During the interview, Skye discusses her upcoming tour, explaining that the stress and illness have taken a toll, but she's back and ready to make amends. She apologizes to her fans, family, and team, vowing that such issues will not repeat. She recalls her desperation, even pulling out clumps of her own hair, but claims she's now in control of her life. After the interview, Skye and her mother, Elizabeth, leave the studio and Skye poses for photos with her waiting fans. In the car, her manager Joshua updates her on her rising ratings, inspiring Skye as she hopes her tour will restore her to her former success. However, during a rehearsal, Skye suddenly experiences intense back pain. The choreographer is concerned, but Skye brushes it off, claiming she simply stumbled. She refuses a break and continues, but the pain worsens. She takes strong painkillers and is startled when someone knocks on her door. In her panic, she drops the pills down the sink. It's her mother, Elizabeth, reminding her that the group is waiting. Skye hides her pain, but in the car, it becomes unbearable. She receives a text from an old friend, Lewis, a former classmate and drug dealer, telling her he's going to sleep. Skye calls him and heads to his place. When Skye arrives at Lewis' apartment, he suddenly grabs her and threatens her with a sword. Terrified, Skye begs him to put the weapon down, explaining she came for medicine. Lewis checks her phone, realizes he sent the message, and drops the sword. He confesses he's been haunted by something and is under extreme stress. Though scared, Skye agrees to stay as Lewis assures her he'll calm down. While he goes to fetch the medicine, Skye notices a news report about a tragedy from the previous year. She turns off the TV and calls for Lewis, but he doesn't respond. As she heads to the bedroom, a disoriented and deranged Lewis attacks her, collapsing soon after as if choking on his own fear. Skye tries to help, but Lewis suddenly smiles eerily and begins violently smashing his own face with a dumbbell, peeling his skin off before dying. Terrified, Skye flees the apartment. Back at her own place, Skye tries to regain her composure, but is unsettled by the strange, bloody image of Lewis that appears to her. As soon as she turns on the light, the vision disappears. The next day, she focuses on preparing for her tour, trying to forget the horrors she witnessed. During a fan meeting, her mother reminds her of her estranged best friend, Gemma, whom she hasn't spoken to since the accident. Joshua also tries to offer advice, which irritates Skye. Later, a longtime fan named Darius invites her to perform a charity dinner for troubled teens. Skye pretends to be enthusiastic about the offer, but later, while at a photo shoot, she opens Gemma's contact information and struggles to make the call. Skye suddenly feels a presence in the room. She scans her surroundings but finds nothing. As she gazes into the mirror, she's horrified to see a bloody reflection of Lewis standing behind her. His hands suddenly grab her face, stretching her lips into a grotesque smile. Skye screams and swats at him, but when she looks back at the mirror, it's just her own reflection. Trying to calm herself, she's interrupted by her mother, Joshua, and a costumer, who heard her scream. Skye quickly blames the costume, claiming she doesn't like it and refuses to wear it. Later, Skye rehearses on stage and signs autographs for fans. One fan, Alfredo, behaves aggressively, grabbing her and stating he wants to peel off her skin. Security swiftly removes him. Skye returns to the fan meeting where a young girl approaches her, smiling widely. Skye tries to engage with her, signing her t-shirt, but the girl walks away still grinning. This unnerves Skye. That same day, she receives an anonymous message from someone who knows about her visit to Lewis' house. Nervously, she pulls out a clump of hair and calls Gemma, leaving a voicemail apology. Gemma calls her back and Skye invites her over to hang out. While waiting, Skye sits at the piano and begins singing. Suddenly, she hears glass shatter. Looking around, she finds a broken water bottle. As she goes to grab a mop, she discovers a t-shirt she signed for Alfredo, along with his belongings, including stained underwear scattered across the floor. She believes Alfredo is standing at the end of a dark hallway, about to attack her, and rushes to the door where Gemma is waiting. Gemma doesn't understand Skye's fear, and Skye sees the water bottle is now intact on the table. Confused, Skye hugs Gemma, surprised to learn she had called her an hour ago. Skye explains she's following her therapist's advice. Water helps her feel in control of the situation. She apologizes for past mistakes and tells Gemma of the incident with Lewis. Gemma agrees to stay the night. Later, Skye has a vision of herself in a wrecked car, her face bloodied, her leg broken, and in immense pain. Beside her is her boyfriend Paul's lifeless body. She cries for help and wakes up in her bed. She shares her dark feelings with Gemma, revealing how she struggled with darkness even before the accident. Gemma calls her a horrible person, and when Skye tries to speak, Gemma gives her a demonic smile. A car horn sounds, causing Skye to fall off the bed. When she stands, she hears Gemma's voice calling her, saying she's already up and made breakfast. Realizing she's late, Skye panics. Elizabeth enters, scolding her for missing rehearsal. Skye hurries to get ready and, with her mother's help, arrives at the venue, apologizing to the group. After warming up, she steps onto the stage. But as they perform, Skye sees Paul's image in front of her and is suddenly overwhelmed with excruciating pain in her broken leg, causing her to collapse. She accuses one of the dancers of throwing her off balance, but the choreographer, who had been watching closely, denies this. Frustrated, Skye storms into her dressing room but finds it trashed. She accuses Joshua, but Elizabeth points out that Joshua has been with her all day. Tension rises as an argument breaks out. Elizabeth reminds Skye that they all cared for her after the accident, and now she owes it to them to make the tour a success. Skye begins to realize how odd she must seem to those around her. Later that evening, Skye attends Darius's charity event. Backstage, she receives yet another anonymous message about her visit to Lewis' house. Nervously, she smudges her lipstick and steps onto the stage. While reading her greeting speech from the teleprompter, the text suddenly stops. Skye improvises a small speech, which turns into a heartfelt monologue about her struggles with substances. As the teleprompter resumes, Skye, not thinking, invites Paul Hudson onto the stage, shocking the audience. She then spots Paul in the crowd, smiling and approaching her. Skye screams at him to stop smiling, and an elderly lady nearby tries to help, but Skye sees Paul and her and pushes the woman off the stage, horrifying the audience before running off. Back at home, Skye continues receiving messages from an unknown number. The stranger seems to know everything she sees and feels, even sending her a video of Lewis' encounter with the demonic entity. The stranger invites her to meet him in a public place, so Skye, dressed in a plain jacket, heads to a cafe where she meets Morris. He explains that his brother fell victim to the creature, which forced him to tear his own jaw apart. Morris has tracked the demon's path through other victims and discovered Lewis's body, retrieving Skye's number from his phone. He explains that the smiling demon is a parasite that refuses to leave a living host. To rid herself of it, Morris suggests he could kill her and revive her after the entity exits, but Skye rejects the idea. As she tries to leave, some fans in the cafe recognize her, asking for photos and praising her actions with the elderly lady. Skye quickly leaves, distressed. At home, she tries to relax but can't find any substances or alcohol. In a fit of anger, she rips out a clump of hair and destroys her apartment. Her dancers suddenly appear before her, smiling as they surround her. They chase, corner, and attack her, ripping out her hair, with one man seemingly forcing his hand down her throat, causing Skye to lose consciousness. That night, she recalls the accident, realizing that both she and Paul were under the influence, and that she was responsible for the tragedy. The next morning, Skye wakes up in the hospital after being found unconscious in her apartment. She begs Elizabeth to cancel the tour, but her mother insists that doing so would end her career, with the record label threatening to sue for millions. When Skye accuses her mother of only caring about money, the entity appears before her in the form of Elizabeth. It forces Skye to shatter a mirror, injure herself, and gouge out her own eye. Skye runs to the door, holding a shard of glass, her robe soaked in blood. She finds her mother dead and tries to flee, but Joshua notices the blood and tries to stop her. Doctors and security attempt to help, but Skye grabs a guard's gun and escapes. Outside, she forces her driver at gunpoint to hand over the car so she can go to Morris. Gemma insists on driving, but along the way, the real Gemma calls Skye, revealing that the entity has been posing as her friend all along. Skye screams, determined not to let the demon control her, convincing herself it's all in her head. She suddenly finds herself at the wheel of her car and meets Morris at an abandoned pizzeria to perform the heart-stopping experiment. Morris leads her to a freezer to preserve her brain, laying her on a table and preparing an injection to stop her heart. Exactly 8 minutes later, he will inject adrenaline to revive her. Skye confesses she's doing this because she ruins everything good, destroying the lives of those around her. As the process begins, Morris leaves the freezer and the entity appears before Skye, taking the form of herself on the night of the accident. It attacks, stretching her lips into a smile with its thumbs, but Skye fights back, biting off its fingers. She grabs the syringe with the medicine and injects it into her neck. However, the entity laughs, declaring that this isn't reality and urges her to tear everyone apart. The next moment, Skye finds herself on stage with Elizabeth alive in the crowd, alongside Joshua and Darius, surrounded by hundreds of fans. Skye watches as the monstrous entity crawls out of her body and into her mouth. She collapses in front of the audience, but then rises, smiling. She begins smashing her head with a microphone, breaking her own eye socket as her fans watch in horror. The second installment of the horror series, centered around the smiling demon, captivates with its stunning visual effects, excellent cinematography, haunting music, and powerful performances by the actress. However, the film remains an acquired taste.